Welcome back to another episode of Risk Check Podcast. The dynamic duo is back together again, and we got a special one this evening for you. But allow us to introduce ourselves first. My name is Perri.
And I'm Rashawn.
And this is Risk Check Podcast. Tonight, we have a friend of the pod from an organization very near and dear to us, an organization that partnered with us very early on in our podcasting career, though it feels like we're a little bit bigger than a podcast today. I guess we're a talk show. I don't know. We'll figure that out somewhere along the line in the next couple of months. But we have our friend, Quaid Walker from Bezel.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Welcome, man.
Thank you. It's I love it. It's great to be here. Yeah. I'm so used to seeing it on the other side of the screen. So
Sure.
It's rad to be in the show.
It's good to finally have you. We've been trying to link up for some time. We kept missing each other. Unfortunately, we missed each other in Geneva.
Yep.
I know you gave a talk out there. You were on a panel.
Yeah.
And I heard it went really, really well. And you guys have been making a lot of moves and a lot of waves. And, we want to talk to you tonight about starting this company, this brand, and how you've managed to, along with your team, to grow this thing into something that's pretty substantial today. So I'm excited to talk to you about that and your story and how you got mixed up in this whole watch business in the first place, because it really is the Wild West. But before we get into that, you've seen the show. You know how this goes. We start with our honorary wrist check. You're sitting across from the man who never repeats a watch, though occasionally he does. But when he does, it's with good reason.
Yes.
I see you got an oldie but goodie on the wrist. Mr. Smith, what's on the wrist?
Oldie but goodie. To Perry's point, I am wearing the tried and true Rolex Cellini Danos.
Woo!
Awesome. Yeah.
I like the strap.
Absolute heater, absolute banger. Disclaimer, I actually did bring a new watch with me, but I decided not to wear it. I'll share it with you guys off camera. It's a fun watch and I'm really enjoying it. So maybe next wrist check, you'll get to see it. But I felt like this was the watch that I wanted to wear today. Whenever I wear this watch, I actually have like a really good day. When I look down at it, I think of, how far I've come in my professional career, my media career, and even, commemorating my wife, right? Like as
That's right. You have an inscription on the back. It's engraved.
So it's engraved on the back with my
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like the film.
Yes. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith on the back, and it has my wedding date. Although I did acquire this watch well before I got married, this was the watch that still every time I put it on, I just feel good.
Well, you wore that on your wedding day, no?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So I wore this on my wedding day. It was on a black strap, but I decided to change it to the custom Jean Rousseau strap with the lizard. I chose the exact small scales to give it that play in the light.
Yeah, when I see you with the suit.
No, that
thank you.
That is clean. I like that. Yeah.
I kind of get a little bit of effect when we get to your wrist check. It play, the light play with this piece, and what's not to like? Super thin, manual wound. It's precious metal, solid white gold with the rose gold bezel and indices, and it's this is just a transitional piece for every occasion.
It's a great watch. I love when you wear that watch. I especially love it on the strap. I think it complements it really well. Just gives a whole new life to it. The Cellini line is, I think for many people don't even know about Cellini. It's discontinued now. We have the new Rolex
1908.
The 1908, which kind of it's a good watch though. I like it. I'm a fan of the bracelet.
Yeah.
But no, I do love it when you wear this watch, particularly on that strap. It makes it fun. And I think puts the Cellini line in a new light, but also shows people that you can have fun with Rolex in spite of what Rolex says, because if it's not factory, it's not a Rolex. We know it is. It's a watch. Good job.
Yes, thank you.
I'm wearing a new watch.
Woo!
It's not mine. It's on loan. I get to experience it. Shout out to our friends at Revolutionizing. I'm wearing a Freak One. This is pretty crazy. It's pretty freaky. So for those who don't know, Revolutionizing is a really old watch brand. They've been around for years. Kind of started with like doing marine clocks and moved into marine watches. And the Freak is a watch that was originally developed in 2001 by Ludwig. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to try, but he's a famous watchmaker. Google it and look it up. And it's been around since, and now the brand is really kind of known for this model. They won a GPHG award 2 years ago for the Iconic Award, which is not something that I think people typically think of when you think of like hot horology, but the Freak is iconic. And so what you have here is the absence of a crown. So you actually manipulate time through the bezel. And we'll show you on video, but there's like a lock that you pop like so. You rotate the bezel, you adjust the time. It has that flying carousel silicone balance wheel. One of the first brands known for using silicone in their watches. Kind of controversial in the beginning, but now you fast forward to today, even Rolex uses silicone in their watches, as does Patek. They've experimented with it. And there's something, what I really, really enjoy about this timepiece is this like perfect blend between like hot horology and sport. And though it's not a sports watch, and they make it very clear, don't go diving with this thing, it feels like a sports watch. It's definitely something that you could wear every day. Feels luxury. The rose gold bezel is beautiful, along with the movement inside. And it's just a unique experience. I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to hold on to it for a little bit, and you'll probably see this on the show a couple of times.
Yeah.
But shout out to UN.
Yes.
Quaid,
Yeah.
you've got a favorite of mine on the wrist.
Uh-oh.
What's on the wrist?
I have a 15300 Royal Oak.
Woo!
Yes.
I think it's my favorite daily driving Royal Oak. It's
I would agree.
39 millimeter. I think it's the right size. So obviously it was taken over by the 15400 and the 15500, and I guess now the 15510, and the 41 millimeter just doesn't sit the way I'd like it on my wrist. And I think you get some heft to it a little bit more than like a 16202 or
For
a
sure.
15202. I like the second hand, some action on that when you stare at it. So I love it. And my Grail AP is the salmon dial 15202.
Oh,
And so the like muted white
That's a
dial
good one.
is my like half step there in the way that I love it. So I wore this thing a lot. I beat it up, and it's been fun.
It really is everything they've set it out to be.
Yeah.
I think a Royal Oak it's ubiquitous with the brand, right?
Yep.
Like AP makes a ton of watches. They've been around for a really long time. But when you think AP, you think Royal Oak. And I think, some people might feel a way about that, but I think when you actually get to experience the watch, you get it and you understand why. It really is an iconic design. Gerald Genta really knocked it out of the park with this one. Rashawn is a fan of 70s design watches.
Yeah.
It's a watch that I think you wouldn't expect to kind of reinvent itself, but it feels fresh and new all the time when they release new models. They recently released their new caliber for the perpetual calendars, which I got to handle in person. I'm a huge fan of. I didn't think I would be, but it's like if Apple made a Royal Oak. It's crazy.
Sweet. Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah. It's a beautiful timepiece. When you experience a Royal Oak in person, you then begin to understand why people go crazy about finishing.
Yeah.
Right? The way it plays with the light between like the brush and the high polish is crazy, especially along the case with those kind of like beveled edges and the bracelet. It's just sick.
Yeah.
I remember I had owned a couple Rolexes before I got my first Royal Oak, and I was in Vegas. I was there for a trip, and I think I had done a little well gambling, and I went into the boutique there and schmoozed a bit. And shout out to the Vegas AP boutique. And I went in there and I acted like a high roller hotshot because I had some chips.
Sure.
And I was like, I hit him with can I pay for this in chips kind of a thing.
That's hilarious.
I didn't know if I had enough chips at the time, but I just felt like the move. And they were like, no, you can't do that. But luckily, it was enough. And so I got a call it was my first Rolex I ever got was a 15450.
Nice.
So the 37 millimeters.
Yeah.
I liked the smaller size a little bit better. Wore that for a little bit. And I remember going back to the hotel room and just like doing the like
Yeah.
bracelet that's integrated.
You make it do the worm.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I was like, who am I to deserve such a thing? And I love a number of brands, but something about buying my first Royal Oak, like I felt like I didn't even deserve to own this thing. Like I felt like I had arrived from a watch collecting perspective.
It is. It's a nice feeling.
And so it's been fun, and this is my favorite one. But
It's a great watch, man. It's a solid watch.
I wanted to to throw another funny thing in your wrist check, because you're actually wearing another technology piece on your wrist, right?
Yeah.
What is it? The Whoop.
The Whoop.
Oh,
Yeah.
the Whoop.
And you know, I think it's one of the first kind of tech pieces we've had in a
I
wrist
debated
check.
about taking it off.
No. We love it. Like, keep it. But I think that's,
I actually need to get one.
Yeah, they're great.
I mean, I think it's very useful. Even, you know, people bag on the Apple Watch, and I kind of get it, right? Because it's not like machinery, it's technology. But, you know, throwing that on there while you're wearing a wristwatch is pretty fun. So I just kind of wanted to throw that little Easter egg out there.
Yeah, no, it's I'm very big on like knowing the data about my health and everything like that. Especially our office is in LA. We're here in New York. I guess we're here in Jersey, but we're here in the East Coast, and I'm working both hours right now, and sleep's pretty limited. So it's cool to quantify, like, you know, how recovered I am and how ready I am to attack tomorrow, kind of a thing.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, let's talk about something every watch collector can relate to. When you're on the hunt for the piece, you slid into DMs, combed through the forums, maybe even hit up a friend of a friend, and still nothing.
And that's where Bezel comes in. It's not just another marketplace. It's where tech meets tradition. Whether you're after a Rolex sub or independent grail, Bezel has tens of thousands of authenticated listings waiting for you. And if the watch isn't listed yet, no worries. Just add the model to your wish list, and Bezel hits you with real-time notifications the moment something drops.
And for those of you who don't have time to obsess over listings 24/7, Bezel's got a concierge team that can source the watch for you. They've basically take all the stress out of the process so you can just enjoy the watch on your wrist.
Plus, for sellers, guarantee sales in just a few days. Thanks to the auction feature, it's a win-win, whether you're buying or selling.
So if you're ready to make your next move in this watch game, hit up Bezel, and trust me, you'll wish you'd done it sooner. So, Quaid, I want to get into kind of your story. You know, you're from the tech world. You know, to Rashawn's point, you know, machine technology, though they do go hand in hand, in our world of watches, sometimes they often seem like they're worlds apart. How does someone from Google wind up in the luxury watch space? How did you even get into watches?
Yeah, I was at Google for 6 or so years. Mm-hmm. My first bonus, like big boy bonus I ever got at Google, I bought a Rolex with it.
Yep. Which one was it?
I bought a 14060 sub.
Okay.
I liked the smaller lugs. It felt like, I don't know, my tendency here, especially when I first got into watch collecting, I thought, like, you look at the photos and I thought it would look really big on your wrist always. And I think you see the watches in the metal and they're actually like really well proportioned and great. But I went with the 14060. And I don't know if I made my parents proud with that being like the first purchase I made as an adult, but I think I just got obsessed with it from there. I think a lot of what I did at Google was design things on a screen all day. And so I had an obsession with craft and building really high quality products, but it was all inherently very digital.
Yeah.
And so there was something so similar from a craft perspective, but opposite from a tangible perspective about watches that I really loved.
Yeah.
I think I also had like grown up watching James Bond films, and
of course,
you see the black subs, and you're like, you know, I think every young man wants to be James Bond for a second. So I think that's what started it off, but it just kind of spiraled from there. And I think I very quickly like realized how challenging it is to acquire the watches you want. And I had a couple too many of the like ushered out of the door, you can't buy this Rolex moments. And so I think that was my intro to the watch space. And then, you know, ultimately got obsessed with watches that I had to start buying in the secondary market. And that kind of is what led to Bezel.
It's funny how being told no can
Yeah.
like spark this thing in you.
Yeah.
It either like completely turns you off,
Yeah.
or it incentivizes you to like go and do something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just funny because like I know some people get bent out of shape about not being able to have access to the watches that they want, but there's also like the thrill of the hunt that I kind of enjoy. So you get your first Rolex. How quickly did that spiral into your next Rolex?
Pretty quickly, honestly.
It's always that way.
But the watch that really started like the whole business, I wanted a Hulk really badly.
Okay.
And it was still available at retail at the time. And
It wasn't 90 grand yet.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. I think it was maybe, $7,500 retail or something like that. And I think I missed my window of like, there's people in our office that always talk about like they picked up Hulks at discounts, like, when back in the good old days.
Yeah,
but
no.
I missed that window. Unfortunately, they were still available, but I was in San Francisco, and I was on every wait list I possibly could be on.
Sure.
And I was also like in there ready to pick up anything.
Yeah.
But the Hulk was the first like thing that really made me dive like deep into the secondary market. And it when I mean deep, like I mean like the watch was available at retail and I couldn't get it, so I needed to buy it in the secondary market.
Yeah.
For the 15060, it felt rational because it was discontinued and it was neo vintage. And I felt crazy trying to spend like, I think it was like 14 grand at the time on a Submariner, knowing it was like, that's like almost double what retail was.
Yeah.
And I was working with a dealer in San Francisco and they had one, they sourced it from Japan. And then I went to go pick it up and they're like, we just sold it. We'll get another one in a couple weeks. And I was shopping online and I didn't have enough watch experience to like, really shop the seller the way that I should.
Interesting.
And I just felt like pretty paralyzed and I had the cash ready to spend, but I was new enough to the watch industry that I didn't have like a source that I thought was credible enough to go get this watch for. And so I felt pretty lost. And at the same time, I was into sneakers and like collecting other things. And I was used to using kind of products like StockX or Goat and like these managed marketplaces. And I think my hope at the time was like, there has to be some tech forward managed marketplace. They handle the authenticity and authentication checks. Like I can trust them, could download the app and they'll just have the watch in stock. And that didn't exist. And I think that is what planted the seed for Bezel in my mind. And I was a designer at Google. I was one of the like founding members of a team there called the Google TV team. It was like Google's attempt of building a really awesome competitor to Apple TV or Amazon Fire TV.
Right.
And I had just launched that. And so I had this like 0 to 1 experience, but I felt like I was closing a chapter at Google at the same time as I was getting obsessed with watches and having this very like visceral moment trying to get the thing that I wanted. That it just worked out. And it took me about a year of like, who am I to do this? Like, I don't know much about the watch space yet. Like I'm still just a casual collector.
Yeah.
But I knew a lot about building products and I knew a lot about the technology side that, it took us a year to put the team together, put the team in places because I knew that I needed to work with my co-founders to build the product. But we also had to bring in like the watch chops to fill the space that I didn't have from a knowledge gap perspective. So the first hire was Ryan Chong, who was on the pod.
Shout out to Ryan. Yeah, he's in front of the pod.
Ryan came over from Sotheby's, absolute legend, and kind of helped build out the authentication side and now runs that entire side of the team.
Let me ask you really quickly. You did what you did at Google. You saw this opportunity via a vacuum in the space, right? It was empty, and your experiences led you to solve this problem. What was it like? It's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to like gather your pals around and be like, hey, I got an idea. Yeah. Do you guys want to do this? What was it like pitching it to your team? Like the initial, like your co-founders, like the guys who like, all right, we're going to do this.
Yeah. So 2 co-founders, Chase Pion, J.R.
Shout out
Johnson.
Shout out to Chase.
Chase and I grew up together. We've been best friends since 3rd grade. And Chase is always like the smartest dude I know. And this was not the first. Like there were several businesses that I'm like an ideas guy my entire life, and so I've always been a designer.
Yeah,
I like used to always like tinker with writing code and apps and building things. And I had built many fun little apps on the side in my entire career, and I had always kind of like lobbed them over to Chase as like my rational thinking friend that would tell me I'm an idiot.
Good.
And majority of the time he told me I was an idiot. And I think with this one, it was a little bit different. Like I sent it over to him and I was like, hey man, like, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And like 3 days later, he had like a full incumbent deck and like the market size. And he was like, so like, I'm thinking about quitting my job. Like, I think we're going to do this.
Yeah,
and I was like, all right, well, all right. Like, I guess we're doing it.
That escalated quickly.
And then Daryl and I had built a business together in college. Like we worked on an app together, and he left the app to work at Google. I left the app to work at Google. And he's just like the best engineer I've ever had the kind of privilege of working with. I think Daryl's superpower is he cares about product in such a visceral way. Like he really cares about like the look and feel and execution of the product. And obviously we're building our average order value is $10,000. Like the app has to feel like it's in many ways like a tasteful frame to the expensive products that we were selling.
Right.
And Daryl was just the man for the job on that. And so I got really lucky that I went 2 for 2. I'd like to think about like my entire career led me up to the point of being credible enough to convince 2 badass dudes to start the business with me. But so yeah, they jumped on with me and we tinkered for a little bit, raised capital pretty much, right out of the gate. And Ryan was our first hire, and we kind of haven't looked back from there.
It's crazy. Awesome. You had something.
So from what I'm gathering from your early, intro into watches, you didn't fall into it the traditional way of like the forums and community, and doesn't seem like you had anyone to look to, because you said, when you decided to go to the secondary market, you still felt lost. So I want to ask, how did you guys have the comfortability to go ahead and say, okay, I'm an enthusiast, I feel this way, I'll bring this team around me, we're going to step into watches, being cold turkey, not knowing much about watches?
Yeah, it's probably a little crazy. I think I think that in many ways kind of was a superpower though, where it's like I felt the problem viscerally. Like when we set out to build Bezel, it was like the thesis initially was, and I think it is still strong today. It's like, how do you build the best place for someone to buy their first watch? If you build a business around the first time watch buyer, 2 things happen. I think it challenges you to just solve the problem in the most thoughtful way possible, because getting someone comfortable kind of jumping off and buying their first watch is, I think, the hardest problem.
Right.
It's like the user education of it, it's the comfortability of it, it's like the whole product side. But I think the other thing is if you're really honest with the approach of acquiring someone's first watch with them and they can trust you, I think all this next generation of whales like have to start buying their first watch somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you do right by them and you scale the inventory, like they'll stay with you as a customer. And so our bet was, if you bought your first watch with us, hopefully you'll buy your 50th watch with us, right? Yes. And like we scale up the LTV of these customers by doing right by them and by building the concierge and scaling it by that. So I think the roundabout way of answering your question is, I think like it actually was a kind of feature, not a bug, that we were kind of new to the space.
Yeah.
But it took us like a year to get the confidence to do it. I think the way that my brain works, for better or worse, is like I want to solve problems that I have, and I want to use technology to do that. So every time there was an opportunity and a problem that I felt like was a bummer in my life, I want to build products around that. So that was no different in the watch space.
Yeah.
But then we just got really lucky that through like some of our earlier investors, we had heard Ryan's name. Chase used to live in New York. Ryan lived in New York. They played like pickup basketball together at some rooftop basketball court, and like the investor
only in New York.
The investor was Vasu from Courtside.
Okay.
Yeah. So he connected us with Ryan. Chase had heard his name, and so like super serendipitous, we all met. And Ryan happened to be like thinking about watches in such a credible way, but also in like a new way, open to new technology and kind of bridging the gap there, but had kind of the respectability that we kind of needed to plant that initial seed. And Ryan jumped over and kind of helped us, from the ground up build the business. And that's kind of where the credibility came in. But yeah.
So my second part to that question, because you are someone that uses technology to solve problems and you are a serial entrepreneur, do you think that it could have been any other product that you could have still solved those problems, or you just felt the responsibility to, bring this like user experience to watches?
Yeah, I think the watch space at the time and now, I think for someone that cares about product and is also trying to build like a lasting brand and also like a lucrative investment driven business, I think it's a really special space. And the reason for that is like any industry that involves folks that are really, really passionate about what they're doing, I think you can build something that caters to their needs in a way that almost feels addictive. Like our 30-day retention is insanely high. Like we put up like social network numbers from we're like a transactional marketplace for watches. And I think that's because there's a bunch of weirdos like us that want to sit and stare at these things. Like when I'm like on a plane and I'm waiting for it to take off, I'm not on Instagram. Like I'm browsing through watch auctions. Right. Yeah. So I think you have that obsessive quality that's there. The second is I think, these are really expensive things. And there's a lot of apprehension there. And so I think the initial core customer is coming in like baseline nervous. And so if you have an option to take them from like a negative feeling and go so over the top and, make it feel so lovely that it becomes a positive feeling, the delta between where they started and where they ended is so massive that they end up walking away being like, wow, that was great. Like that actually felt like a better experience than anything I've engaged with in other industries. And I think that opportunity was super cool. And then I think the last thing I'll say is like, watches has this like tradition, hyperhuman aspect of it that like you can't replace with technology. And so there's this fun mix of, like the app should feel really modern and thoughtful, but also like you should be talking to a real person that's on our concierge team that knows your name, that you can book their calendar, you can get on the phone with them. Like it needs to feel like it's still storied. Exactly. And so that fun, like mixing of these two worlds allows you to build something that I think is ownable and not generic. And then you can create value out of that as a business. And that's kind of the thesis there.
All right, let's be real. Buying watches can be a little stressful. You're navigating through a sea of listings, wondering if that mint condition piece is really mint, hoping you're not about to drop some serious cash on something sketchy.
Into Bezel. These guys built a platform where every watch goes through an authentication process. We're talking old school watchmakers who know their stuff, checking every detail. They even smell the papers. And no, I'm not kidding.
And here's the kicker. Bezel isn't just for seasoned collectors. Whether you're spending $1,000 or $100,000, they've got a high-touch concierge service that will guide you through the entire process. You get a real human interaction, not some chatbot giving you the runaround.
And if you're selling, their auction platform guarantees a sale in days, not months. So whether you're adding or offloading, Bezel makes sure it's smooth sailing.
So next time you're eyeing that dream piece or looking to make room for a new one, check out Bezel. They've taken the hassle out of collecting so you can just enjoy the journey. You use the word traditional. And I think when most people think about the watch world, especially in the mainstream level, I think they still think of it and kind of look at it this way, right? Kind of like this old artsy fartsy like world of guys who sit around in like tweed blazers and smoke on pipes and talk about watches. So what I'm really curious about, I imagine when you guys were raising capital for this, that maybe some of the first initial people you spoke to were people from the industry.
Yeah.
How did you sell the idea to them? Because the watch space prior to Bezel, there wasn't a lot of modernity in it, right? There wasn't a lot of, outside of like just general media coverage, there wasn't anything like this. If you visited a brand's website, in most cases, you couldn't even buy the watch directly from them.
Yep.
What were those initial conversations like when you're like actively like telling people like, this is kind of how we see the future of this business going?
Yeah, I think obviously we raised capital in a traditional sense. Like we did the venture route, but we also were very intentional about like building. The way that I think about raising capital, I think about like, it's not just the money, it's how do you give yourself an unfair advantage to achieve something based on the partners you're bringing
the relationships,
on, not just the money. Exactly.
Right.
And so there was really like a spectrum. And on one side of the spectrum, you had like the traditional technology venture investors. And I think the challenge there was convincing them that there's like a multi-billion-dollar opportunity in watches.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like you sit down with a venture investor that doesn't understand the watch market.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be comfortable understanding like that's maybe not our investor. You know,
Right.
like
Okay.
I think there's a lot of them where you'll talk about the fact that it's a $30 billion a year market and like on the secondary side alone, and it's going to outpace the primary side. And we haven't even accounted for wholesale. Like
Right.
there's crazy numbers. It's bigger than sneakers, bigger than streetwear, bigger than all that stuff. And that turned some folks that maybe weren't traditional watch folks. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you had kind of like the watch heads and they were like, I don't know why this needs to change.
Yeah.
Like, but maybe some of the ones on the far end of the spectrum initially like weren't our seed investors. Like we needed to like walk the walk a little bit before we got them involved.
Right.
But then there was this class of people that kind of was like the middle ground of two of them that were like, I get it. Like I absolutely get this. And there's a lot of dealers and a lot of people from brands that just totally understood that like there was an opportunity here to modernize the watch space. And there was a bunch of folks in venture that loved watches. There's a lot on the celebrity side and the big collector side that, you know,
You
love
got some
watches.
big names, I think, in some of your first initial rounds of funding, like Kevin Hart, John Legend, and some others.
Kyle Kuzma.
Kyle Kuzma, Steve Aoki, Mike Rubin, you know, a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
And I think that was the big eye opener for me. It's like back to using your investors as a mechanism to do the hard things or make the hard things easier. We knew that like out of the gate, who was going to trust this new brand to spend, you know, $10,000 on an app? We needed to use really reputable individuals to back us so we could start building a brand before we had one.
And I think that's one of, I'm sorry, but I think that's one of the key things that you guys did in terms of your approach that's different from the marketplaces, at least that existed at that time, was that you saw yourself as a brand. And that is a very new age thing. I think a lot of marketplaces were just like, hey, we'll name it. This is where you come and get your watches and that's it.
And that's it.
But you guys thought of yourselves, I think, first initially as like kind of creating a community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like, and it's funny, it's like that was my like biggest thing that I felt was really, really important, is to just do this in the way that felt right. And like it kind of came naturally. Like the only way to do this right, in my opinion, was to think about the whole holistic experience. It's like we weren't just an app, in my opinion. Like the customer service concierge experience needed to be stellar. Like it needed to feel better than any other customer experience you've ever had anywhere else. Like, and naturally, like as you start building these touch points and elements around, we did partnerships very early.
Yep.
We were joking that we met at an event we did.
We
with
met
Soho
in Miami.
House.
Yeah. Soho House.
And Soho House is like an early partner of ours. And I think the luxury of watches is the luxury of watches. You're in a luxury space. You have cool partners and you can do cool stuff. But as you start building these little interaction points and nodes of the business, I think organically you kind of wrap that around with something and that becomes the brand.
Yeah.
And so just the nature of operating in a luxury space, I think brand is really, really important. And it's funny, if you would have asked me in the early days, like, are you building a brand? I don't know if I would have said like, that's the most important thing.
Yes.
But I would have said, we can't mess up. We can't fuck up. We can't like we can't have a bad review. We cannot screw anyone over. Like we're building this thing, and luxury moves slowly. It moves intentionally, and it's based on relationships. And so our earliest customers should be the foundation of our growth. And they're our referral network and our early partners. Like I wanted everyone to work with us and say, well, they're new to the space, but like I really liked those guys, or like I really enjoyed interacting with them.
And that did happen. I mean, we have a mutual friend, John Johnson.
Yes.
And very early on, when we kind of put together our partnership, he actually went ahead and sold his black Daytona on Bezel. And I remember we were eating at Walker's in Tribeca. It was a place that we frequent to get a burger and a beer. And he was raving about how pleasant the experience was.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, it was easy."
I love that. Yeah, and that's the thing is I think there's like this, and it's such a technology trope, but it's like the Paul Graham quote of like, you want to do the things that don't scale in the early days, because that's like what actually causes delight in customers. I like to think that we haven't lost that, and I hope we never do. I think like there's this whole thing where as you start to scale, you start to optimize, you move faster, like things get left behind. And I just don't think that we have the same luxury of doing that, because we were joking about this before the pod starts, but like when people are spending this kind of money to buy these type of things, it's oftentimes celebratory.
Yes.
It's oftentimes the most money they've ever spent on anything other than a car or maybe a house. And it's like, I don't take that lightly. I think that's a really big privilege to be involved in that transaction. And it's so cool. Like we have our buyers send us photos of the first dance at the wedding with the wedding watches they bought,
awesome.
or like
That's awesome.
they got it engraved for their wedding, or they have a new addition to the family. Like there's they're having a son, so they bought a watch and they commemorating all that, and we're getting photos of this and they love sharing it. And I think watches are inherently so community driven.
Yeah.
That obviously like we were very careful with how we built this, but a lot of this just happened organically. But I think just doing right by the customers and like being there to listen to them and talk to them.
Because you get that feedback
100%.
almost instantly, and I think it's underrated. Like when you get good feedback, it's very easy to like kind of pat yourself on the shoulders, like, oh, we did that right. But like to actually go back and look like, well, what did we do? Why did it work?
Totally.
Is like a major key, and sometimes even more helpful than screwing up and then trying to clean it up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say, because I was laughing internally when you were talking. I was like, oh, I wonder if I'm using this techie term correctly, but the user interface, right?
Yeah.
Like your user interface is very very seamless.
Appreciate it.
And what speaks to me the most is that you take a retail experience, like you take a retail approach that actually should be implemented, but you do it on the other side of a computer screen. I want to ask you, how are you guys able to get it right when physical bodies can't do it?
Yeah.
What's going on?
That's a great point. I think this is a great opportunity to explore, like, to your point, the concierge service.
Yeah.
Like, so what exactly is that, to Rashawn's point? Like what separates you from like other marketplaces?
Yeah. So I think on the concierge side, every buyer is paired with like a real person in our office. This is a watch expert. You have access to their calendar. They're a real person, and like they're trailing your entire collecting journey. And I think that was the big thing for me when I first started in watches. Like I wanted a person that I could turn to, and I think we wanted to build a business that stood by the same values, but I think you still want that human connection. And I think the goal is to build a technology platform that empowers your concierge to know everything about you from a watch consuming perspective and find you cool pieces, but then also builds like the technology side so you can browse on your own and you have the inventory and all that to make that happen. Sourcing was a big deal for us. Like, if you wanted a birth year date just because it was really important to you, we're not going to have that in stock necessarily, but I wanted to build, and especially in the early days when we didn't have a lot of inventory, a mechanism for you to be able to ask your concierge to go out and find that for you. And they act as kind of the gatekeeper / liaison to the otherwise intimidating watch world that I didn't have as a collector. I think so that was the big one for me, was that relationship side. The second was like authenticity was a huge deal. So we built out like all of our authentication processes in-house. We own that entire flow. So every watch that is sold is overnighted to us. It goes through a set of authentication specialists on our team and watchmakers on the team. We're running it through all of the kind of diagnostic performance checks. If it's dive watch, it should be hitting a certain degree of pressure. It shouldn't be losing time. And then we run everything against a loss registry to make sure it was never reported stolen. Our rejection rate right now is just under 30%. So it's pretty crazy high at a $10,000
I think higher than what most people might think.
It blew my mind from the beginning. I think like to think about like being nervous about this transaction in the space and then seeing the rejection rate being that high, I just think it feels really good to be on the side where like we're really strict about the authenticity of these things. And ultimately it goes back to the initial conversation. It's like we'd rather turn away a sale than push it on, because I want to build a relationship with our customers. I'm not betting that you're going to buy one. I'm betting that you're going to buy a bunch of these things, because we all know that's what happens in the watch space. No one just buys like a potato chip. Like no one just has one of these things. Like they scale it up. And then the user experience and interface side, I think like the goal there was how do you take the best experiences of buying a watch on the retail side, the brick and mortar side, everything about it, and build something that does feel tailor fit to the space? It had to feel genuine. I think the watch collectors are really good at sniffing out things that feel disingenuine.
Sure.
And I think I got lucky that I got to work. I am a designer by trade. I was a watch collector, so I felt the problem myself. And so I'm still like the person designing all of the flows. And that's a fun place to be in because I still get to dive in and like really play with the pixels and build the product with my hands, kind of a thing, while still having like a zoomed out understanding of what we're doing. So it makes the like vision to execution of it still very one-to-one. So it's allowed us to stay very close, I think, still to where we want to be with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned, earlier on, we talked about like developing bezel for someone who's purchasing their first timepiece. An incredible problem to solve that you guys have solved. But focusing on that, how did you then extend the brand to build trust with people who might be seasoned collectors?
Yeah. I think it was like a lot of challenging ourselves to feel as trusted and high quality as possible, like pushing the expectation of a digital product and an e-commerce experience into something that feels like you're walking into the best possible boutique and you have the best possible specialist and everything's just going right for you that day. Like, how do we replicate that feeling and how do we understand that? And so a lot of that was the concierge. It was tailor fitting the product. It was the technology side of it. And we realized that like, as you matriculate through your collecting journey and you get a larger collection and you want bigger ticket things, like people still want to feel cared for. They want to still feel like they have an advocate. Like that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
It's just we needed to scale the inventory to make sure that we have that available. And like to this day, like most expensive watch we sold is $1.2 million. Cheapest watch is in the 700s, right? And so we treat the transactions the same way. And as long as we are kind of honest and forthright and we care about our customers, I think it serves kind of all aspects of the price points there.
Right. So you have Bezel. It's trucking along for a couple of years. You guys are growing annually each year. And then you guys get the bright idea to introduce auctions. How did you guys even, I would have never, we don't know, the people do auctions online, right? I would have never have expected this from you guys, positioned as just a marketplace where people can go and buy watches, to then do this in a way where kind of everybody can get involved. How did you guys develop this?
It's funny. It didn't feel like a big jump to us. So it's good to hear that. I think like the way that we thought about auctions was on both sides of the marketplace. Like the challenge of a marketplace is obviously it's two-sided. It's the whole chicken and egg problem. Like you have to care for your sellers, you have to care for your buyers. And the cool thing about some features is they optimize the experience of both. And I think auctions is very much one of that. And that's why we launched auctions in Q1 of last year. And now it accounts for like 30% of our monthly sales. So
that's huge.
It's definitely scaled pretty meaningfully. And so
it's also fun.
Yeah. So that's the way I think about it. So on the buy side, you get this like daily drop, new experience. I don't know what it's going to be. Interesting prices. They're going to sell under market, above market. You get to have something competitive there. And all of the bids start right now at like $700. So it's like you have an interesting entry price and it increases retention for the product. So, our retention skyrocketed when auctions dropped because all of a sudden, instead of, I might want a Daytona, I might, I want the Ghost, the white gold Daytona on the Oysterflex. Yeah. Love that watch. That's like what I'm waiting on. That's what I'm thinking about buying for myself next. My birthday this month, so might get crazy. But I check the auctions every day and I'm lobbing bids into stuff that I don't know I wanted. But like I'll see like a palm dial Datejust and I'm like, I guess it's summertime, like I need to have that if I get the right price. And so I think on the buy side, it creates that like variable reward, like new things every day. Yeah. On the sell side, on the marketplace, I think it's amazing. You get to set your own price and you get to wait to have a buyer there. I think the biggest question we got from sellers was like, I need liquidity now though. Like I got to move this. I have a life event. I have things that I have to handle. And so the fun part about auctions is it allows you to sustain the upside of selling it at market. You're not like walking into some secondary market seller and getting cash and they're baking in their margin or whatever it is. The cool thing about auctions is you could still sell at theoretically the market rate, but you can get paid out within 7 days. And so that was the whole upside on the seller side there is just liquidity and quickness.
It's a quick process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, not everyone wants to sit and wait for their watch to sell in the marketplace. So
Yeah. What I enjoy about, you speaking to the ins and outs of Bezel, you guys have the right formula that makes it work, but there's no secret to the success. Something that I love, you guys always drop data. And I was like, man, maybe I wore the wrong watch because you guys shared that the Omega Speedmaster is one of like your hottest watches.
most wanted, yeah.
I mean, talking over like a Bruce Wayne, a Batman, or any other Rolex in between. And I always say like the Speedy is one of the best commercially available watches.
Yeah.
Why do you guys feel so comfortable to share this kind of data in this widely competitive space and feel confident that no one can do what you guys can do?
I think the openness and like building in the open and sharing the data is like just consistent with us trying to be as transparent and thoughtful as possible with our customers. Like I think if we have data that we can share to watch lovers that is interesting, it's worth sharing it. I think if we can be transparent about our process and our rejection rates and things like that, I think it speaks to the intentionality of how we're building things. And so I think the watch industry is always a walk the walk versus talk the talk kind of a thing. And so I love the way that you distilled that. It's like I'm not going to sit here and act like we're like fucking groundbreaking, like we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not like, blockchain AI powered like cat food brand now. Like, it's like, we're just like, we sell watches. We build technology to be tailor fit for that process. Like, there's nothing generic about the tools that we've built. Everything's built in house around like what we think the best way to buy and sell watches is. And we try to do it in a way where like, that's how I'd want to buy watches.
Yeah.
And I still to this day wake up every morning and I look at our Trustpilot reviews and I want to make sure like everyone's having a really positive experience. And like our concierge team, like people show up because they want to sell watches to people and they want to put smiles on faces, and the most like, cliche thing to say, but like it's not rocket science, but it's just caring about the customers and it's doing it in a way that like feels very intentional to space. I said it before, but I do think the watch industry is really good at sniffing out things that feel disingenuous or feeling like, was this product built for handbags and like now it's also selling watches? Like, that's probably not going to work. It's a little clunky, right? Like, we're watches through and through. We have no intention about kind of focusing on any other industry. Like, we just want to perfect selling and buying watches for the customers. And so that's kind of the obsession. And it's been fun to see the growth, but I think we're just certainly getting started on kind of what we feel like we can build there.
Talking about, tailoring this thing for your clients, both buyers and sellers, I think you guys have obviously put a great deal of thought into what that process looks like. If you could humor us and sort of describe the client journey for a second, just to give people who are listening or watching kind of like an idea of what it works, how it works if they've never experienced buying or selling on Bezel.
Yeah, so on the buy side, we have just under 800 million in listings. So that number's gone pretty crazy recently.
800 million listings?
$1 million in listings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was going to say, whoa. Dude's got a quarter of the planet.
But that's still a lot of money.
Yes.
Okay. $800 million worth of listings.
Yeah, so theoretically we have, most models in stock. If something isn't in stock, your concierge can certainly source it. And this is everything from, as mentioning, like the starter watches all the way up to the big dogs. You can browse that experience. You can choose to, be a power user that jumps on there, searches, adds things to their wants, finds the watch in their own way, the way they want. or you can take a completely hands-off concierge approach where you ping your concierge, you get on a call, you say, I'm looking for a Speedmaster. I don't know if I want a sapphire sandwich or a reduced. I don't know the difference. Like, and they'll walk you through it and they'll help you pick it out and they'll help you find the price point. Do you care about box and papers? Does it need to be unworn? What even does it mean to be unworn? Like, answers all the questions. We don't make you deal with the seller. Like, if there's any questions about the watch, like, we liaison that entire process. And so our job is to like really advocate for your collecting journey. In either use case, you end up buying the watch that you want. We hold the funds in escrow while the watch is being shipped to us from the seller. We accept credit cards, wires, whatever you would imagine there. We even have like an Affirm integration for buy now, pay later.
Okay.
Once the watch is in our office, it goes through the authentication check. It goes through the diagnostic check.
I heard you smell the papers.
We smell the papers. I don't personally smell the papers, but the team is smelling
Whose job
papers.
is that, and what's their title?
So it's our authentication specialist, and it's just part of the job. And so like,
funny.
We've rejected a number of watches that are like neo vintage or on the vintage side and Datejust or whatever it is, and the papers didn't smell like musty enough.
Wow, this is a real thing.
100%. And
Wow.
so I think I'm not like, Ryan is the one that should be talking about the entire flow, but the fun part is it's like very much a detective process, and the papers smelling off isn't necessarily like a make or break moment, but it's like it's a
sign.
clue
Yeah.
to say like, okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into this. And then you'll find out that, oh, like that 8 on the serial looks different than like a perfect 8. Like maybe it's been re-engraved. Like, oh, this watch was born with different papers. It was reported, and then we find out it was reported stolen.
Wow.
And then there's that fun trail of that. And we reveal that in our kind of author or Bezel report, and we reveal that on a quarterly basis. But we get crazy stories. We've had Aquanauts that were reported stolen, and like samurai sword heists in London. I love to talk about. We have like, really, really expensive, full gold Nautiluses with like amazing bracelets, but they're not factory and they're completely fake, and it just like depletes the entire value of the watch. And so like the spectrum of problems could be, it's a Datejust that was born with a different dial and they swapped it to a green dial to create more value. It's an authentic green dial, it's an authentic Datejust, but like that is just not the way the watch was born. We'll block that. It could be a watch that, is a 16610 sub that is no longer passing pressure. Probably not the way that you'd want to collect that. We'll block that, right? Like all the way to like, this is a downright complete fake. I can't imagine what's happening.
Yeah.
And the way the authentication check goes is we review everything digitally before it goes live. So we block out like the blatant problems. The goal is that we don't want anyone even shopping on things that have issues.
Right.
From the beginning, we don't let anything on the platform that isn't factory. So no like aftermarket parts or anything at all. There's no confusion on there. And then once the watch is sold, it's overnighted to us, and it has that kind of last in-house hands-on check with kind of the experts. Once it passes that, the funds are released to the seller. We overnight the watch to the buyer, and the buyer receives the watch. So on both sides, on the seller side, they're paid out faster than any other competitors because we're doing all the authentication checks in-house. There's no like 14-day escrow period where the seller is waiting to get the okay from the buyer to get paid. We'll pay you out. Once it's okayed by us, which is usually like, 3 days after the transaction started, you're getting paid. And on the buyer side, you're getting it overnighted to you. You can check the watch out and hang out with it. And then you have your concierge to answer any questions or anything there. It gets added to your owns in the app now. So you can kind of track your collection in there. And
that's awesome.
And, I think that's kind of the main life cycle. And we hope that you come back and you buy more in a couple months.
That's awesome.
Incredible. Yeah. You guys have solved a lot of problems. Where do you kind of go from here, right? I mean, the sense that I've gotten from you and just kind of watching the brand evolve over the last couple of years, adding features, tinkering, is there anything else that you guys are working on that perhaps you can share where you're kind of looking at the marketplace and the industry differently, or you see maybe an evolution coming that you guys are preparing for in terms of the experience? No,
I'm happy you asked. I think the way that we think about the business is the core problem was like the best place to buy and sell watches. Yeah. And so that was, how do we build the best solutions for our sellers? And then how do we make the experience feel as seamless and memorable on the collecting side. I think what we've learned now is on the collecting side, there's, without saying too much, like there's all of these interesting services that exist around the watch space.
Okay.
And so taking like a true technology platform approach, once you buy your watch, I think there's a lot of, as you can imagine, things around owning a watch, insuring a watch, around like generally keeping that watch secure.
So you guys are starting to think about after sale.
I think we're starting to think about like how we can insert ourselves into the full life cycle of a transaction to make sure that we're providing value as much as we can for our customers. And so a lot there. And then on the sell side, I think as you can imagine, we have a lot of different sellers. We have like, you know, folks like us that maybe want to sell a few pieces. I'm sure if you got anything at retail, you would never sell a watch, but
I would.
I'm sure. I
have no qualms saying that.
Yes.
But yeah, you want to flip a watch. Like we have retail clients, and like we want to make it really easy for you to get the full rate of another retail client buying from you directly, and so there's a lot of folks like that, all the way to, you know, we have multi-million-dollar a year professional dealers that are running their business through Bezel. As you can imagine, as a seller kind of transitions through that growth as a seller or starts on the professional side, like there's a set of like tools that we can create to help them run their business in a more efficient way. And so same type of approach on the seller side, like the long-term play for us, I think, is to not just be the best place to buy and sell watches, but to ultimately like build out the underlying technology layer for kind of the industry and the way that you think about it. So I'm hand waving a bit, but kind of that's the way that we're thinking about it. And I think this will be a very big year for us as far as like, you know, making strides towards that journey. And then we're US only still right now.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
I think the scale
You
of
guys
the
haven't
inventory
rolled
is
this out
quite large,
internationally yet.
but I think I'm excited. I left Geneva very energized.
That's awesome.
Because I think there's a lot of, you know, really awesome opportunity to scale the brand into like, you know, intentional markets and kind of take over the world.
Great.
So understanding that the secondary market has now become a multi-million-dollar business, maybe even a billion-dollar business, you guys do protect both your buyers and sellers. And I think most sellers are reluctant to offer their watches if they'll be posting on the internet because the fear of flipping watches. Is it a concern for you to protect the seller when it comes to listing a watch, right? Serial reference, etc., warranty card, all of those kind of things. How are you guys making it both advantageous for people that want to get out of a watch, the same as the people that want to buy them?
Yeah, so the big differentiator for us on the sell side is we don't reveal who the seller is at all, right?
Yes.
So if you were selling a watch, no one would have any idea you're a retail collector. You could be a professional dealer. They would know nothing about that. It's about the watch, the photos you take, the condition of the watch, the price, and then our team sells the watch for you. If you were the buyer in that case and you had questions, if I was the concierge, like I am interfacing between the two of you. On the buy side, that's kind of the visceral moment that I was frustrated with, where like I didn't know how to shop the seller. I didn't know the questions to ask. Candidly, I wanted someone to be like, hey, like, is this fine? Like, I'm going to be okay to hand hold me.
Yeah.
And I think on the sell side, it allows retail sellers to actually compete with professional dealers in a way that they can in other marketplaces. If you're on a competitive marketplace, I think you're oftentimes trained to kind of like shop the seller,
For sure.
pay attention to who you're looking into. And it makes it really hard for someone like me who's never sold a watch before and has no ratings in competitive marketplaces to compete and really get full dollar value out of my watch. We wanted to obscure that. So it's like you're shopping the watch and you're trusting the bezel process because you know that, you know, any watch that's sold, whether it's from retail folks or from professional dealer that's done thousands of transactions, we treat them the same way. We don't cut any corners. All of them are shipped to our authentication team. They're run through the same checks. So you can basically buy from a retail person or someone on the professional side. So I think the goal there is, I think transitively, we would protect the seller. Like if you bought it at retail, we're not exposing who that is.
So let's say, for example, I got a Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Flip it.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes those after sales, people kind of get jammed up.
Yeah.
Where is that protection for someone to kind of not end up in that situation?
I mean, I think the only exposure you would have from your authorized dealer would be if they told you to come on back. You know? And unfortunately, we can't help you with that yet. But,
Yes.
but,
There's no loaner watches to go back into the AD.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
There's no world where you can look up the serial or you can look up the warranty card or look up the name and see that it's being listed.
Yeah.
The same way that you can look up the name in kind of other places.
I think that's brilliant. I never really considered how anonymity worked in this whole process and how beneficial it was to both the seller and the client, but I totally see it now.
We were super inspired. I mean, like that's the way GOAT and StockX works in the sneaker space. And I think and what we found is if you remove like an obsession on the buyer side with like picking the right sellers, you just start to, and you trust the process. I think it like lessens the cognitive burden of actually buying a watch.
100%. It makes it completely equitable. And you're searching, you're trusting the marketplace and you're shopping the product.
Yeah, and then if you find a watch that you like, you don't have to then sit there and worry about but who's selling this to me?
Not at all.
You know that we're going to have your back and we're going to check everything.
100%.
So you can fully trust that.
Yeah.
I have another question. I'm curious. I've been all throughout the Bezel site. I mean, if you collect watches, you visit all these different sites and you're looking at stuff all the time. And the user interface is awesome. I love it. I'm curious because now it's in a place where it's kind of fun. How many of you guys internally are drinking the Kool-Aid? Like who's like betting on watches in the office consistently? Like, are people doing? You don't have to name them.
No,
but like it's a thing, right?
Well, I think the thing. I mean, obviously you work for the company because you like watches,
Sure.
right? And I like to think that if you like watches, we're a pretty cool place to work because whether you're an engineer or you're literally on the authentication team or the specialist side or the concierge team, you're handling watches every day. You know, you're seeing these like grails come in, and you're checking them out. That was like even the freak that you're wearing. I remember like in the first month we started the company, that was one of the first watches we sold. We sold the freak, and that was the first time I had seen that watch.
Yeah,
and it was so cool because I like had left my job at Google to start this company, and all of a sudden like I love watches, and I'm like in the office and I'm checking out all these amazing things as they come in, and our watchmaking room is all glass, so you can watch them like tinkering on the watches as they're going through. Yeah. And sometimes I waste way too much time and I just sit there and stare at them, and they're probably like, "Get out of here." And so, yeah, I think like people are engaging with the platform. Certainly on the auction side, there's all these rules associated with like if you want to bid internally, like what information you can't know anything about the auction prices or the reserves or anything.
Okay.
So bidding internally, it depends kind of how closely you worked with the watches is kind of your clearance on being able to work there or to actually transact. Launching an auction platform, there's a lot of red tape and legalities associated with it. So like we're very buttoned up there.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't force our employees to use the platform, unfortunately, or fortunately, but a lot of them obviously love to engage.
That's awesome,
use it.
man.
That's fun.
I have one last question for you. You guys have accomplished a lot. I think the platform is incredible. Where do you see Bezel in 5 years? So we're talking 2030.
Yeah.
What does Bezel look like in your mind?
I hope we're doing what we're doing right now, which is a lot more customers. Like we've retained all the customers that we have. I think the goal is to like continue to build out the best place to buy and sell your watch to still sustain and grow that trust that we've already built out. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, like I think we have this option of inserting ourselves in as much of kind of this life cycle of owning and selling a watch as we can. And the goal is just continually build like trusted products around solving problems that people have in the space. And so it's a bit of like a hand wavy esoteric answer, but I think there's a lot of cool things to build in the space. We're through and through watches. And I'm really curious to see how far we can take the technology offering and how like platform approach can scale this thing from a width perspective. I'm excited to be in different countries. I'm excited to continue to scale the brand. I'm excited about like what partnerships can look like. I think the industry is growing so fast. Generally, we were talking about this earlier. Like, I think people care about what you're wearing on your wrist that otherwise used to not care about that.
Yeah, big time.
I think watches in the broader conversation of luxury and fashion and lifestyle is just evolving really quickly. And so from a brand perspective, if Bezel, if you see someone with a Bezel hat, if that means like, I care about buying watches, I'm very intentional about how I collect, like I'm a modern collector, I think we've done our job right. I think we're chipping away at that. But obviously, I think we have a lot to keep doing, and the space is growing a ton, and I'm really, really excited about the next year or two, let alone the next 5.
It's an excellent point. Nice. Quaid, you got to send us some merch.
Yeah,
I need some hats.
We got hoodies, we got crew necks, we got hats, we got it all. So
let's do it.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you for joining us this evening. This was a lot of fun. Your story is incredible. I think what you guys have accomplished is awesome. And it tells, we talk to members of our audience all the time, and it isn't something that we have to like sell to them and push on them. And you guys have never asked us to do that. You guys have really come through and supported the pod. And you've built a really great product and a great brand with some really good people whom we've actually developed some really meaningful relationships with. So I want to say thank you for joining us this evening. It was awesome having you. For those watching and listening, you know where to find us right now at richcheckpod.com, superniche.com, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and maybe one day
in the metaverse,
and somewhere soon where you may see this. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But this is another episode of Rich Tech Podcast, and we'll see you next week. Deuces.
Hey.